23 days until midterms and an election denier up for a Senate bid in Ohio. Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio joins me now. Senator, it is always great to see you. Thank you for joining us. You've been in office for some time. You've watched firsthand how America's political climate has changed. How worried are you right now, not just about your state, but about this extremism, this election denialism, these basic attacks on democracy?
Well, of course, we're all worried, and it's a difficult time for our country. I mean, we know that a third of the country and probably a little higher percentage of my state still is not sure or denies that Joe Biden should be president or is president. And that's really troubling when we have, a Republican Party in Ohio, those that aren't elected. I mean, you did something on the Secretary of State. He isn't a per se election denier, but he certainly played to them. They all play to the Trump right-wing base. They all play to election deniers. They all play to climate change deniers. They all question democracy, even though they've won virtually almost everything in my state over the last decade. So it's a troubling time. That's why we fight back. That's why we're going to have a better year this year, because most Ohioans don't buy into this and most Americans don't buy into this.
So let's talk about the Secretary of State question. You actually were the Secretary of State once. No, but I don't remember an election before this where we've talked about secretaries of state, where anybody pays particular attention. You probably put the mark next to whomever is a member of the party that you are otherwise voting for. What do voters in Ohio need to understand about the threat of maybe not an election denier, but an election denier footsie player overseeing elections? Because this is happening across America. There are various flavors and textures of election deniers, all the way from conspiracy theorist, absolute election deniers, to those who, as you say, flirt with it a little bit.
Now, think back. When I was Secretary of State, one of the things we did was, I heard you talk about McDonald's earlier, that you like fast food. We got McDonald's Corporation, when I was Secretary of State, to print 1 million tray liners, those little pieces of paper on, on the bottom of your tray.
I know tray liners well.
There were voter registration forms. We got tens of thousands of people registered. And with ketchup stains, mustard stains, we accepted them. Bob Evans also did it, the restaurant chain headquartered in Ohio. Then there was little opposition from even conservative Republicans, because it was a way to encourage people to get involved. That is so far from where the national Republican, the Trump Republicans are, the Ohio Republicans are. And they, in fact, have continued to pass legislation to make it a little bit harder to register and vote, a little bit harder to cast ballots in Ohio, even though they're winning too many times. But that's the importance of Nan Whaley for governor, and the importance of Tim Ryan for Senate, and a number of these House races, Sykes and Landsman and Capter, that are contested in Ohio, because, we are a 12-4 Republican House delegation in Ohio, because they game the system, because they rig the election systems in the sense of redistricting. We know that. There's no question about that. We fight back, but the statewide, we can win this year. Because voters are catching on to this Trump rig the election system, climate deniers, election deniers.
You ran for president, and a lot of people, you've been involved in that presidential race, and a lot of people like you for your moderate views. The Senate race in your state is unique. Your colleague, Senator Rob Portman, is stepping down. And in a statement in January of last year, Portman cited the hyper-partisanship that you and I are talking about. He said, quote, "This is a tough time to be in public service. I don't think any Senate office has been more successful in getting things done. But honestly, it has gotten harder and harder to break through partisan gridlock and make progress on substantive policy that has contributed to my decision," end quote. You're a substantive policy guy. It becomes very hard today to have discussions about substantive policy because of this, right? Because of all the noise of election denialism, because of the noise of extremism. Tell me how you evaluate this whole thing. I think you generally liked working with Rob Portman. He was certainly one of the last Republicans, senators, to still agree to come on our shows.
Yeah, politics isn't, I don't see politics as liberal, conservative, left or right. I see it as whose side are you on? And it's so clear that Tim Ryan is on the side of workers. I talk often about, from Dr. King's words and Pope Leo XIII's words, dignity of work. And no matter whether you swipe a badge or punch a clock or work in an office or work on salary, whatever, the dignity of work really should transcend all of this. And you still can get things done in the Senate. And I will be able for sure to work with Tim Ryan. J.D. Vance, I'll do what I have to do if he wins, but I think Tim Ryan's going to win this race. But someone said this to me, that a former Republican congressman said Donald Trump wasn't an outlier in the Republican Party. He was an accelerant. In other words, Trump just got Republicans to get to where Marjorie Taylor Greene and those people in the party are getting. I mean, that movement has been there. There are some exceptions, but very few senators with an R after their name has stood up to this president and said this is wrong. They're all afraid. Even senators who are retiring are still not doing that by and large. Shelby and Inhofe and Toomey a little differently maybe. But so much of this is on Republican extremism, and that they simply are not willing to acknowledge, to stand up to this president about climate change, about election denial, all of those kinds of things. And that's why we need a big victory this year to finally put those people and those views and those stances to rest.
Senator, it's always good to see you. Thank you for taking time to be with us.
Thanks,
we appreciate
sure.
it. Senator Sherrod Brown is a Democrat of Ohio, and I appreciate that he introduced fast food to the discussion this morning.